A desperate plea. In the vast expanse of the Andromeda Galaxy, the Zephyrian civilization thrived on their peaceful, verdant homeworld of Zephyria Prime. Known for their advanced healing technologies and empathetic nature, the Zephyrians had long avoided the conflicts that plagued other star systems. However, their tranquil existence was shattered when the brutal Krygox Empire set its sights on their resource-rich planet. Ilara, a young Zephyrian diplomat, watched in horror as the Krygox warships descended upon her world like a swarm of locusts. Their advanced weapons, forged from the bones of conquered civilizations, easily overwhelmed the Zephyrians' meager defenses. As cities crumbled and the death toll rose, Ilara knew that her people faced certain annihilation unless they found help. In a last-ditch effort, Ilara and her fellow diplomats gathered in the hidden depths of the Zephyrian archives. They pored over ancient records, searching for any mention of a civilization that could stand against the Krygox onslaught. Finally, they found a name that kept appearing in the most obscure texts: humans, the Deathworlders. The records spoke of a species from a distant, savage world known as Earth. These humans had evolved on a planet where every day was a fight for survival, and as a result, they had become the most resilient and adaptable beings in the known universe. Their technology, born from necessity and forged in the fires of countless wars, was said to be unparalleled in its destructive power. Ilara knew that contacting the humans was a gamble. The Zephyrians had long avoided interaction with other species, fearing that their peaceful ways would be corrupted by the violence and greed that seemed to plague the galaxy. But with their very existence hanging in the balance, they had no choice. With trembling hands, Ilara activated the ancient interstellar communication array. She took a deep breath and began to speak. Her words carried on a desperate plea across the stars. People of Earth, I am Ilara of the Zephyrian civilization. We are a peaceful species, but we now face extinction at the hands of the Krygox Empire. We have heard tales of your strength, your ingenuity, and your indomitable spirit. We beseech you, in our darkest hour, to come to our aid. Without your help, our civilization will be lost, and the Krygox will continue their campaign of terror unchecked. Please, hear our plea and stand with us against this threat to all life in the Andromeda Galaxy. As the message sped across the vast distances of space, Ilara could only hope that the humans would receive it in time. She looked out at the burning ruins of her once beautiful city, the screams of her people echoing in her ears. The fate of the Zephyrians now rested in the hands of the Deathworlders, and Ilara prayed that they would answer the call. Little did she know that on the distant blue planet called Earth, a grizzled fleet commander named Admiral Thorn was about to receive a message that would change the course of human history forever. Assembling the fleet, Admiral Thorn stood on the bridge of the UES Relentless, the flagship of Earth's Deathworlder fleet, his steely gaze fixed on the holographic display before him, which showed the swirling expanse of the Milky Way galaxy. The Admiral was a veteran of countless battles, his face etched with the scars of a lifetime spent defending humanity from the dangers of the cosmos. As he studied the star map, a sudden alert flashed across the screen. An urgent message from the Andromeda Galaxy, a distant realm that humans had long known of but never ventured to. Thorn's eyes widened as he read the contents of the message, a desperate plea from a species called the Zephyrians, begging for aid against the brutal Krygox Empire. Thorn knew that the decision to intervene in an interstellar conflict was not his alone to make. He immediately contacted Earth's leadership, the Council of Nations, and relayed the Zephyrian plea. The council members, representing the diverse nations and interests of humanity, began a heated debate on the merits and risks of getting involved. Some argued that the Zephyrians' plight was not Earth's concern, that humanity had enough troubles of its own to deal with. Others saw the Krygox Empire as a potential threat to Earth's future, a ruthless power that could one day turn its sights on the Milky Way. And there were those who believed that humanity had a moral obligation to help those in need, regardless of the costs. As the debate raged on, Admiral Thorne remained silent, his thoughts racing. He had seen firsthand the horrors that the universe could inflict upon the unprepared and the innocent. He knew that if Earth turned its back on the Zephyrians, it would be condemning an entire civilization to extinction. Finally, after hours of intense discussion, the Council of Nations reached a decision. Earth would send the Deathworlder fleet to aid the Zephyrians, but with strict conditions. The fleet's primary objective would be to evacuate as many Zephyrian civilians as possible and provide humanitarian aid. Any military engagement with the Kragox Empire would be strictly defensive in nature. Admiral Thorne wasted no time in assembling the fleet. He handpicked the most advanced warships and the most experienced crews from across Earth's space forces. The UES Relentless would lead the charge, accompanied by a dozen other vessels, each one bristling with the most cutting-edge weapons and defenses that human ingenuity could devise. As the fleet prepared to embark on its mission, tensions ran high. The crews knew that they were about to venture into uncharted territory. Facing an enemy that had already conquered countless worlds, they also knew that the fate of an entire species rested on their shoulders. Admiral Thorne stood before his assembled crews, his voice ringing out with authority and conviction. "We are the Deathworlders," he declared, "born on a planet that has taught us the true meaning of survival. We have faced challenges that would break lesser beings, and we have emerged stronger for it. Now we go to the aid of those who cannot defend themselves, to stand against a threat that would consume all in its path. We go not as conquerors, but as protectors, as defenders of life and liberty. Let us show the galaxy what it means to be human." As the fleet launched into the void, the stars streaking past their viewports, Admiral Thorne couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change everything. The Deathworlders were about to make their mark on the Andromeda Galaxy, and the universe would never be the same. First contact. The Deathworlder fleet emerged from the swirling vortex of the intergalactic jump point, the massive ships shuddering as they decelerated into normal space. Admiral Thorne stood on the bridge of the UES Relentless, his eyes fixed on the viewscreen, which showed the lush green world of Zephyria Prime looming before them. As the fleet approached the planet, they were immediately hailed by the Zephyrian Defense Forces. A holographic image of Ilara appeared on the bridge, her delicate features etched with a mixture of hope and fear. "People of Earth," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I am Ilara, the one who sent the distress call. On behalf of the Zephyrian civilization, I thank you for answering our plea. Your presence here gives us hope in our darkest hour." Admiral Thorne stepped forward, his rugged features softening slightly as he addressed the Zephyrian diplomat. "I am Admiral Thorne of the United Earth Space Fleet," he replied, his voice firm but respectful. "We have come to aid your people in any way we can. Our primary objective is to evacuate as many civilians as possible and provide humanitarian assistance." As the two leaders began to discuss the details of the evacuation plan, tensions began to rise on the bridge of the Relentless. The human crew, used to the rough and tumble ways of Earth's military, found the Zephyrians' gentle mannerisms and hesitant speech to be frustratingly slow and inefficient. Thorne sensed the growing unease among his people and turned to address them. "Remember," he said, his voice low but intense, "we are guests in their world. Their ways may be different from ours, but we must respect them if we are to work together effectively. Patience and understanding will be key to the success of this mission." As the evacuation efforts began, human shuttles descended upon Zephyria Prime, ferrying countless civilians to the safety of the orbiting fleet. The Zephyrians marveled at the efficiency and organization of the human crews, their advanced technology making short work of the massive logistical challenges. However, the relative calm was shattered when the Kragox Empire launched a surprise attack on the Zephyrian capital city. Dozens of enemy warships descended from orbit, their weapons raining destruction upon the already battered civilization. Admiral Thorne reacted immediately, ordering the Deathworlder fleet to engage the Kragox forces. The human ships moved with a speed and precision that stunned the Zephyrians, their advanced weaponry cutting through the enemy's defenses like a hot knife through butter. On the ground, human Marines fought side by side with Zephyrian soldiers, their advanced armor and weaponry proving to be a devastating combination against the Kragok's ground forces. The Zephyrians were amazed at the humans' resilience and determination, their ability to keep fighting even in the face of overwhelming odds. As the battle raged on, Ilara and Admiral Thorne worked to coordinate their forces, their initial misunderstandings and cultural differences gradually giving way to a growing sense of trust and respect. They knew that the fate of Zephyria Prime depended on their ability to work together, to combine their strengths and compensate for each other's weaknesses. In the end, the combined human Zephyrian forces managed to repel the Kragok's attack, but at a heavy cost. The capital city lay in ruins, and countless lives had been lost on both sides. As the smoke cleared and the wounded were tended to, Admiral Thorne and Ilara knew that this was only the beginning. The Kragok's empire would not rest until Zephyria Prime was under their control, and the Deathworlder fleet would need to adapt and evolve if they were to have any hope of victory. The stage was set for a long and brutal conflict, one that would test the limits of human ingenuity and the strength of the newfound alliance between two vastly different civilizations. The Deathworlders had answered the call, but the true test of their mettle was yet to come. Turning the tide. In the weeks following the Kragok's empire's surprise attack, the combined human Zephyrian forces worked tirelessly to shore up their defenses and develop new strategies to counter the enemy's overwhelming might. Admiral Thorne and Ilara spent long hours in the war room, poring over intelligence reports and strategic maps, searching for any weakness in the Kragok's armor. One of the key challenges was the Kragok's advanced shielding technology, which rendered most conventional weapons useless against their ships. The Zephyrian scientists had long struggled to find a way to penetrate these shields, but their efforts had been hampered by their civilization's pacifistic nature and lack of experience with offensive weaponry. Enter the human scientists and engineers, who brought a fresh perspective and a wealth of knowledge gained from centuries of warfare and technological innovation. Working closely with their Zephyrian counterparts, they began to develop new weapons and tactical systems specifically designed to counter the Kragok's threat. One of the most promising developments was a new type of quantum-entangled torpedo, which could phase through the Kragok shields and detonate inside their ships. The torpedoes were the brainchild of Dr. Lena Sorensen, a brilliant human physicist who had spent years studying the fundamental properties of the universe. As the new weapons were put into production, Admiral Thorne began to plan a series of targeted strikes against key Kragok strongholds. The Deathworlder fleet would use its superior speed and maneuverability to hit the enemy where they least expected it, while the Zephyrian forces would provide support and intelligence from the ground. The first target was a massive Kragok shipyard, located in a heavily fortified star system on the edge of Zephyrian space. The shipyard was responsible for producing a significant portion of the Kragok's warships, and taking it out would deal a significant blow to their offensive capabilities. As the Deathworlder fleet approached the shipyard, they were met with fierce resistance from the Kragok's defense forces. The enemy ships swarmed around the human vessels like angry hornets, their weapons pounding against the Deathworlder shields. But Admiral Thorne had a trick up his sleeve. He ordered the fleet to launch a volley of the new quantum torpedoes, which phased through the Kragok shields and detonated inside their ships. The results were devastating. Dozens of enemy vessels were torn apart from the inside out, their crews vaporized in an instant. With the Kragok's defenses in disarray, the Deathworlder fleet pressed its advantage, launching a full-scale assault on the shipyard itself. Human Marines stormed the facility, engaging in brutal close-quarters combat with the Kragok's defenders. The fighting was intense and bloody, but the humans' superior training and equipment eventually won the day. As the shipyard burned and the Kragok's forces retreated, Admiral Thorne knew that this was a significant victory, but he also knew that it had come at a great cost. Many brave human and Zephyrian soldiers had given their lives to make it possible, and the casualty reports weighed heavily on his conscience. In the aftermath of the battle, Ilara approached Admiral Thorne in the war room. She could see the weariness and sorrow etched into his features, and she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You have given my people hope," she said softly, her voice filled with gratitude. "Without your aid, we would have been lost. I know that the cost has been high, but please know that we will never forget the sacrifices your people have made on our behalf." Thorne looked up at her, his eyes haunted but determined. "We will not rest until the Kregok's threat is ended," he replied, his voice firm. "Your people deserve to live in peace, and we will do whatever it takes to make that a reality." As the Deathworlder fleet prepared for its next mission, the tide of the war had begun to turn. The Kregok's empire, once thought invincible, was starting to feel the sting of defeat, but the war was far from over, and the hardest battles were yet to come. Victory and beyond. The final battle for Zephyria Prime was a desperate, brutal affair. The Kregok's empire, sensing that its grip on the planet was slipping, had launched an all-out assault on the Zephyrian capital city. Thousands of enemy soldiers poured onto the surface, their weapons blazing as they advanced through the rubble-strewn streets. Admiral Thorne and Ilara led the defense, their forces fighting with a courage and determination born of desperation. The human Marines and Zephyrian soldiers fought side by side, their bonds forged in the crucible of war. They knew that this was their last chance to save Zephyria Prime, and they were willing to pay any price to achieve that goal. As the battle raged on, the Deathworlder fleet engaged the Kregok's warships in orbit. The quantum torpedoes and other advanced weapons developed by the human Zephyrian alliance proved to be a game-changer, allowing the fleet to punch through the enemy's defenses and strike at the heart of their command structure. In a daring move, Admiral Thorne led a small strike team onto the Kregok's flagship, intent on taking out the enemy commander himself. The fighting was intense and brutal, with the humans and Zephyrians facing off against the most elite Kregok's warriors. In the end, it was Thorne himself who confronted the Kregok's commander, a massive reptilian creature known as Warlord Jaxor. The two leaders engaged in a titanic struggle, their weapons clashing and sparking in the dim light of the flagship's bridge. Thorne, his armor battered and his body bleeding from a dozen wounds, finally managed to gain the upper hand. With a final, desperate effort, he plunged his combat knife into Jaxor's throat, ending the warlord's reign of terror once and for all. With their leader dead and their command structure in disarray, the Kregok's forces quickly fell into chaos. The Deathworlder fleet pressed its advantage, destroying the remaining enemy ships and launching a massive ground offensive to drive the Kregok soldiers from Zephyria Prime. As the smoke cleared and the dust settled, the scale of the victory became clear. The Kregok's empire, once thought unstoppable, had been shattered. Zephyria Prime was free, and the Andromeda Galaxy was safe from the threat of conquest and oppression. In the aftermath of the war, the Zephyrians and humans worked together to rebuild and heal. The two species, once so different and distant, had forged an unbreakable bond through their shared struggle and sacrifice. Victory and beyond continued. Ilara and Admiral Thorne stood side by side at a grand ceremony honoring the heroes of the war. The Zephyrian capital city, now rebuilt and gleaming in the sunlight, was filled with people from both species, all united in their celebration of peace and friendship. As the two leaders looked out over the crowd, they knew that this was only the beginning. The Deathworlder fleet, forged in the fires of war, would now serve as a symbol of hope and unity for the entire Andromeda Galaxy. They would stand ready to defend the innocent and oppose tyranny wherever it arose, always guided by the principles of honor, courage, and sacrifice that had defined their struggle against the Kregok's. For Ilara, the war had changed everything. She had started as a young, idealistic diplomat, desperate to save her people from annihilation. Now she was a leader in her own right, respected and admired by both Zephyrians and humans alike. She knew that the future would bring new challenges and dangers, but she also knew that with the Deathworlders at her side, there was nothing they could not overcome. As for Admiral Thorne, the war had been a defining moment in his life. He had always been a soldier, a warrior born and bred on the unforgiving battlefields of Earth. But now, he had found a new purpose, a higher calling that went beyond mere survival or conquest. He had seen the best of humanity in the courage and selflessness of his fellow Deathworlders, and he knew that he would spend the rest of his life striving to live up to their example. As the ceremony ended and the celebrations began, Elara and Thorne looked to the stars, their eyes filled with hope and wonder. They knew that the universe was vast and full of dangers, but they also knew that as long as the Deathworlders stood together, there was no limit to what they could achieve. And so, the legend of the Deathworlder fleet spread throughout the galaxy, a shining beacon of hope and unity in a universe that had for too long been defined by darkness and fear. The humans and Zephyrians had shown that even the most unlikely of allies could come together to achieve the impossible, and in doing so, they had changed the course of history forever. As for what the future held, only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the Deathworlders would be ready, no matter what challenges lay ahead. For they were the guardians of the innocent, the defenders of the weak, and the champions of all that was good and just in the universe. And they would never rest until the galaxy was safe and free for all who called it home.